Tell you what, I ride Mike Sullivan as much as anybody when it comes to his preference, his very, very clear preference to older players over younger players. I'm not going to do that right now, not as it relates to the goaltending. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. I'm back from Salt Lake City, and I'm back with a lingering impression, and a powerful one at that, of a team that really, really, really wants to make something of this next week and change. You are free to dismiss it. So am I, for that matter. And I'll acknowledge to you that I might be unduly influenced by having been around them for the past couple of days up in those mountains, but they mean it. They're intense about this. And if you don't believe me, or you don't believe the broader group, then believe Sidney Crosby. He wants this. He wants to make this happen. And he, like all the rest of them, understand that it has to happen within the next 4 games. That means Predators and Devils, 2 home games, then Rangers and Flyers next weekend, 2 road games, and then, poof, 2 weeks off, during which, according to a lot of different people around the NHL, general managers are going to begin their most serious talks to date related to trades in advance of the March 7 deadline. Kyle Dubas himself has acknowledged this as being a real timeline. The players tacitly, by citing for me repeatedly a couple nights ago that it has to get done in these 4 games, they're acknowledging it. Brian Rust specifically said he feels that they've got to get, and I'm quoting him directly here, 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 8 points. Well, that's asking a lot. The overall exercise is asking a lot, but I'm okay, just me here, with not begrudging them that. Now, part of that is that, as Mike Sullivan's now made clear through both deed and word, he wants to go with Alex Nedeljkovic over Yoel Blomqvist. Now, does that fly in the face of something that he told me in Buffalo at the beginning of that trip when I asked why Ned was getting the start that night against the Sabres? And he looked at me and very matter-of-factly and somewhat emphatically said, of Blomqvist, he's gonna get games for us. Okay. The explanation at that time was that Blomqvist had only been called up 48 hours earlier, hadn't had a chance to even have a full practice with the Penguins, and then all that happened after that is that the team went out west and lost in Anaheim and lost in Seattle and lost in San Jose, and just like that, the entire scenario shifted. That's not Sullivan going back on his word. That's the circumstances changing. So Ned goes and plays in San Jose, plays well despite the result, and then was the best player on the rink for either side in Salt Lake City. I'm going to lay this out for you since they don't use this type of terminology. This is actual desperation time in their eyes. You might have given up on them. I might have given up on them. They're not doing that. And I respect that. They're the ones out there playing. They're the ones out there competing. And they have every right, in my eyes, to go about these next 4 games however it is that they want, including possibly throwing Ned out there even for both ends of the back-to-back in New York and Philadelphia. And I believe that they're within their rights to do something like that without having to apologize for it. Is Blomqvist going to, rot or something like that for a couple of weeks of relative inactivity? No, of course he isn't. Might he gain something from being around that environment, which is about as close as he's probably going to be able to come to replicating Stanley Cup playoffs for some time? Yeah, that's an intense place right now. It really is. And by keeping him around as the backup, if Ned does sputter, then you're still going with your best option when it comes to relieving him. Now, does that mean that the head coach isn't guilty of prioritizing old guys over young guys, anything else. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. We see that every single night in some form or other. And does that need to change in a general sense for this team to advance to wherever it is that Kyle Dubas's plan has them advancing in the next year or 2 or 3? Well, yeah. I just don't think this is part of that. I think Sullivan and everybody involved is doing the right thing in the moment. And in the moment, all that matters is beating the Predators tomorrow night. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Zach, really good one too. He says, DK, I don't mean to suggest that these Penguins are nearly as talented as the back-to-back champions, but if I remember correctly, what helped those teams into contention at the beginning of that run was the elevation of a group of young, hungry players that Mike Sullivan brought with him from Wilkes-Barre. Why do the two choices right now have to be stick with the roster that we've got and try to contend, or tear it down to bring these kids up? Wouldn't it be a boon for those kids to experience a playoff push, get as much ice time as possible with Sid, Gino, Rust, and all the rest? It's an exciting stretch ahead if they can get it together. You know, Zach, I couldn't agree with you more strongly, but with one tweak. It's not even an exception to what you said. You're talking about bringing those kids up for the purposes, I think, unless I'm misinterpreting you here, of, getting playoff experience and the stuff that I mentioned that Blomqvist could get parenthetically here by hanging around behind Ned. What I see and what I would hope to see, regardless of how these next 4 games go, is that the commitment is made to bring up players from Wilkes-Barre who deserve to be brought up, who are legitimately ready for the next level. When I see Ville Koivunen score 4 goals, including a couple of really nice ones, a couple nights ago in that 9-0 rout of Hershey, I want him up here. When I see Vasily Ponomarev get 3 goals in the same game, and I know he's had some NHL experience, I want to see him up here. I don't want to see Noel Acciari and Matt Nieto. And I know it can't be a total transfusion, and I know that penalty killing matters, and I know it's not as simple as exchanging all the contracts here for all the contracts there and salary cap issues and everything else, okay? But where there is an opportunity to have a young, fresh, hungry, significant, potentially, piece of the future who has earned being here and have them here, it's a win-win as I see it. You're bringing up a better player than Acciari or Nieto, and you're giving yourself a better chance of improving by the end of this season. And hear me when I say that, because that's been one of my points in each of the past couple of training camps. I wanted to see the roster built more around players with ceiling. And sometimes they hit it. Sometimes they look like they are about to hit it, and then they don't. Sometimes they don't hit it at all. Drew O'Connor's actually been all 3 of those things, to give you Exhibit A. And he's still worth seeing more. By my count right now in Wilkes-Barre, and again, I'm not there, I'm not seeing those guys on some day-to-day basis or anything, but by my own count, as I look at their performances, I know how they've done in the NHL, and I know what people at the NHL level think of them, I've got about a half dozen guys. Not that are bang, like you'd bring them up right away. Rutger McGroarty's a really good example of that, where he has to be able to just nail it in the AHL before he comes up. He hasn't done that yet. He's shown flashes. That's a difference. Tristan Brose is probably another. Has potential. Still has to show it the whole way down there. But ultimately, when you're talking about Koivunen and Ponomarev and Owen Pickering and Jack St. Ivany, who I still think a lot of, and Sergei Murashov, right now, just like that, you're talking about five players that you're close to certain are going to be here before long. My friends, that's a quarter of your roster that isn't here yet. A quarter of the roster that's close enough that you can project it. And when it comes to the NHL level, the guys who are currently here, they're not really being blocked. Okay? Pickering isn't being blocked by anybody. If Pickering performs the way they want and expect him to, he'll be up and P.O. Joseph or Ryan Shea will sit, or Marcus Pettersson will be traded. So yes, you're right. You can have it both ways, and I think that you should have it both ways. I appreciate that question, Zach. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins all week long. I'll be covering the Predators game tomorrow night, and I'll be making the trip to New York and Philadelphia next weekend due to the utter explosive magnitude of these games, right? Let's do it again Monday.